So this is going to be a reading on a dissertation on the great gods of the mysteries, the Cabeiri, a dissertation on the mysteries of the Cabeiri by George Stanley Faber, coming from out of the early 1800s. That's when this was published. So this can be considered a very early piece of work on comparative mythology, utilizing what would later become modern day techniques. So George Stanley Faber must be a religious individual, because what he goes and does is argues that, contrary to most apologists who argue that there's no similarities whatsoever to be found in any of these religions or any of these mystery rites or anything, to like the Abrahamic faiths, like Christian apologists, like Wes Huff, you know what I mean? Instead of doing that sort of, taking that route, they take the opposite route, and they say that Christianity or Judaism or whichever Abrahamic faith, right? Take your pick. They pick one and they state this is the original fucking worship that everything else devolved from. So they try to take this quasi-historical stance, right? And say like Noah was an actual historical figure, and all other figures like him from all other faiths around the world were de-evolutions of the original historical character of Noah. Now, of course, this position is asinine. It's retarded, to say the least. But it's a very interesting deep dive because these connections are real. He's basically just doing it ass backwards, you know what I mean? It's truly a testament to how simultaneously intelligent and retarded people can be, on the one hand. But either way, this particular portion is going to be in relation to the Ark of Noah and some terms that revolve around it, generally granting a better understanding of who exactly the great gods, who later came to be known as the Cabeiri in Phoenicia, who these are. In Sumer, they were known as the 700 Cree, for instance. So, and this is the same group that Eshman is associated with, who comes to be known as here you Ophiuchus, right? So Asclepius, Eshman, the eighth of the Cabeira, who stands upon Scorpius, the eighth sign of the zodiac. This is why Asclepius, even in his Greek form, is the father of 7 children, and so on and so forth. You see what I mean? This is why Lysin is said to be the mother of 8 children, but it actually turns out that Lysin is really a male deity who is one of 7 or 8. And I'll get into that afterwards. So before I get too distracted. Okay, concerning the sacred terms, hif or sif, and kol or kol, and the various traditions founded upon them, I shall now proceed to offer a few observations upon the sacred terms hif or sif and kol or kol. The Oriental mythologists seem from the most remote periods to have particularly delighted in the wild luxuriance of metaphorical language, and consequently in what is very nearly related to it, symbolical imagery. This imagery, though frequently but ill understood, was early carried into the Western world, the whole religion of Greece having been borrowed from the theology of Egypt, Chaldea, and Phoenicia. Hence we find that the ark was represented by a variety of emblematical animals, one of the principal of which was a mare, while Noah, who was usually considered as the allegorical consort of the ark, was venerated under the symbol of a horse. By the Greeks, however, a mare was denominated hippa, and I am inclined to conjecture that this animal was so called by them not arbitrarily but designedly, and in consequence of its being an emblem of the ark, the Chaldeans and Phoenicians terming that immense vessel in opposition to small open boats hippa or safina, which signifies a decked or covered ship. From this root the Greeks formed their word hippa, a mare, because a mare was the symbol of hippa, the ark, and hence, although in their vulgar dialect the meaning of the masculine term hippos was simply a horse, yet they still retained even in that vulgar dialect some remembrance of the primitive sense of hippa. Accordingly, hippa signifies a ship, hipparchus a commander of ships, hippion a mariner, ibinus a ship, and hippos or hypnos a particular part, possibly the deck of a ship. A large fish being an emblem of the ark, no less than a mare, the term appropriated by the Greeks to the latter, was sometimes transferred to the former. Hence, hippidion signifies a fish, and hippos a large sea fish. Lastly, since the original import of the verb hippa is to cover, the Punic word hopf and the Greek word hippos equally signify a harbor, and hippoporis either a house or a valley, from the idea of their being covered and protected. Hippa, then being equivalent to a decked ship, Argos, or the city of the Ark, was perpetually by the old mythologists styled Hippian, and that not from any connection with horses, except indeed symbolically, but as we are informed by Hesiod, from Hippa, the allegorical daughter of Danaus or Danao. This Hippa was the nurse of Bacchus or Noah, and she is feigned to have received him at his second birth from the thigh of Jupiter. According to the author of the Orphic hymns, she was the same as Proserpine or Cybele, and she was sometimes called Misa, which appears to be Meisa or Meisis, the great Isis. Hence, Ino or Isis is said to have been the nurse of Bacchus no less than Hippa. Hesiod supposes that she was Juno, and Proclus styles her the life of the world and represents her as being like Ceres Caberia, begirt with a serpent. Well, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? At the same time, and if you haven't seen my other videos, but you've seen this part, then just watch the other ones. At the same time that she received Bacchus from his father, she was, in short, the Hippa or covered Ark of Noah, and her reception of Bacchus and his enclosure in the thigh of Jupiter both relate to the entrance of that patriarch into his divinely constructed vessel. Noah was described by the Orientalists as being shut up in an Eric or Ark. Some of their successors corrupted Eric into Yerick, which signifies a thigh, and the Greeks completed the corruption by thence feigning that Bacchus was enclosed in the thigh of Jupiter. In consequence of Hippa or Sophina signifying a decked ship, the title of Hippian or Maritime, which we have already seen applied to Argos, was bestowed likewise upon nearly all the Archite gods. Pausanias accordingly, in a single passage, mentions a Hippian Neptune, a Hippian Juno, a Hippian Mars, a Hippian Minerva, connecting them at the same time with the Dioscuri or Cabeiri. And Artemidorus assures us that Neptune was called Hippias not from Hippos, a horse, but from Hippos, a ship. Okay. And this, so regarding the Cabeiri, I also finally found the direct connection with Nabu. Alright, so there is a Mesopotamian Holy Land, and this is contested like all things in comparative mythology are, but it's the Holy Land of Dilmun, and Dilmun is said to revolve around Bahrain. I don't want to pause this, I apologize, but the audio gets messed up all the time, and I don't like rereading this shit. So this is Bahrain, or a text about Bahrain dealing with Dilmun, and it goes over the origins of the Dilmun civilization. God damn it. As you can see here, the land of Dilmun is holy, right? It's just this, it's basically equated with the Garden of Eden, okay? And Nabu is specially connected with Dilmun. So there is a text, Enki and Ninhursag, in Ninhursaga, that deals specifically with Dilmun, the story of Dilmun, and the deities of Dilmun, and the birth of these 8 deities. Okay, Insac. I apologize again for not wanting to pause this. So as you can see, right here, Inzac ends the list and the story, and we're going to look at the list. He was born from Zag, yada yada yada. Okay, so here, the happy end, each of the newborn deities. So what's going on here is that you have a conflict between Enki and Ninhursag about Enki's like infidelity or some such, right? There's basically a marital conflict. And then you have this weird terminology where Enki is planted in the womb of Ninhursag, the great mother goddess, and these 8 deities spring from Enki, right? The 8 planted inside Enki's belly resume the original purpose. Alright, there's Enki rattles off like to Ninhursag, what part of you, or she asks him like what part of you hurts, and he's like, oh, my stomach, and one of the deities is born from the stomach, so on and so forth, right? My head hurts, deity is born from the head. So there's these 8 deities here that are born, and Inzag is the last of them. He is the 8th. Alright, Right? And Inzag, the eighth of these deities born from Enki, is the Nabu of Dilmun. Alright, so Inzak was the Akkadian form of the name of the Sumerian god Inshak, who featured in the last stage of the chain of births which took place in Dilmun, and is described in the legend of Enki and Enhersag. He was one of the principal divinities of the ancient inhabitants of Bahrain, and the legend referred to as proclaimed Lord of Dilmun. He is said to control reason and wisdom, an area of concern which clearly he inherited from his father. Temples were dedicated to him in Sumerian and Elamite cities. He was worshipped in Babylonian times under the name Nabu. Right? Inshak, Inzak, Nabu, Mercury was the dark god. Now there's another one which specifically lists Muati and Inzak with Dilmun. Okay, so as I stated, Dilmun was associated with the Holy Land. Dilmun is associated with the Holy Land in Eden, and it's connected to the Epic of Gilgamesh, in that Gilgamesh has to descend through Mount Mashu, through like an underground tunnel of some sort, and across this ocean. I mean, it seems to revolve around the Milky Way and the idea of crossing that Milky Way, which is co-located with the Fucus, with Mashu or Masu being one of the readings of the name of Antares. Alright, so from Hamlet's Mill, quote, but where does the proportion Gilgamesh belongs to Ersetu, Nergal to Aralu lead us to? And these are both different words, Ersetu and Aralu, for the underworld. This is not yet to be made out properly. Too many riddles lurk behind every word. About the Mies tree, Marduk knew to tell in the Era epic that it had its roots in the wide sea and the depth of Aralu, and its top attained high heaven, asking Era reproachfully, because of this work which thou, O hero, didst command to be done, where is the Mies tree, flesh of the gods, adornment of kings? Concerning the Mashu mountain, and look who he's referencing, Stephen Herbert Langdon. Concerning the Mashu mountain, Mashu being twin, and that's just one reading of it, Masu in Akkadian meaning hero, and that was the word Masu, Akkadian meaning hero, that was proposed by, who was it? By Archibald Seishi as the point of derivation for the word Moses. Okay, either way. So, goes on, concerning the Mashu mountain, Mashu being twin, watched by the scorpion men, whose peaks reach to the vault of heaven and whose breasts reach to the netherworld below. This netherworld being Aralu. We knew all the time certainly that we were up to Scorpius, probably with a part of Sagittarius, but the huge constellation offers sufficient space for more than one way of descending. It is for this reason particularly that we hope for a better understanding from the Indian lunar mansions Lambda Upsilon Scorpia alias the root alias the tear out of the root alias Yama's two unfasteners, and Antares the eldest alias who slays the eldest. In the sense of procession, the sting of the scorpion antecedes Antares. If we knew the precise extension of the scorpion goddess, we should be better off, and this is the reason, dealing with Enkidu's alleged sickbed hallucinations, makes Enkidu prophecy to that harlot in the text of Bokazi. It is she who has the name Sideri who lured him into the city. On account of the wife, the mother of seven, shall be forsaken. This mother of seven should be Ashara Tamten, the scorpion goddess whose 7 sons are notorious with her. And again, if you're not familiar with this, then you have to watch my other videos. This all comes back to Antares and the notion of crossing the Milky Way, right? And this is that portion in the Epic of Gilgamesh that deals with that, which is also connected with Dilmun, right? The Holy Land of Dilmun, and Nabu, who is Inzak, who is Eshman of the Cabeiri, crossing that ocean, right? These Diluvian gods. Alright, so this mother of seven should be a Shara Tamtim. And this is the scorpion goddess, whose seven sons are notorious with her. This is the deity associated with Antares. It is preposterous, anyhow, to associate one of the other righteous housewife, yada yada yada. You see what I mean? This concept pops up over and over and over again. Okay, so that's about all I got for that for this time. I know the Cabeiri are very complicated, but it is what it is. This is the depths of the mysteries, as it were. All right, much love.